Hey folks, welcome back to Geeks. I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Today's episode will be markedly shorter than our recently filmed Doctor Who episode, but that was really my love letter to all things British science fiction that aren't Blake's 7. Or Quatermass. Or, well, you get the idea. Today we're going to talk about Vampire City, which is a fairly short but really interesting read on a way to structure your urban fantasy type of games. Now, this book, you'll notice it's not very thick, so it doesn't rattle on forever. And one of the interesting things I really like about this is while it has a built-in game engine and it has a built-in idea for how you can use this setting and this game engine, I see absolutely no reason that you can't strip that out and use the basic ideas for setting building from this book to use with whatever your personal favorite dark fantasy, urban fantasy, modern magic sort of game would be. There are a bunch of them. I won't go through them. I've reviewed a great deal of them. Go back and watch if you feel so inclined. What Vampire City does really interestingly is it allows you and your players to almost enter into a bidding war for different facets of the mythology and the reality of vampires for your game. This book very specifically deals with vampires. You could also modify it somewhat for werewolves. You could modify it for wizards, whatever your Dresden Files inspired ideas may be. So how does this work? How does a bidding war system operate in terms of a game, or in terms of how you and your players can sort of get into this and discuss it? Well, one of the nice things about it is it takes a lot of the different pieces of the vampire mythology, like what works for them, what hurts them, how does it operate, and it sort of puts together this, how you can assemble your game accordingly. For example, let's say that you and your players want to do this, but you want to kind of give it its own twist. So what you can do is you can start discussing, what is the source of vampirism? Is it a curse? Is it magic? Is it something you're born with? Is it a contagion? Is it alien, etc.? Secondly, what about the physiology of the vampire? Are they basically alive but have odd dietary needs? Are they truly undead? Are they rotting monstrosities? Or are they incorporeal? Along those lines, it's also, how does the feeding operate? How does what they call the dark rebirth, or how do you become a vampire? How does the curse? What are sort of some of the drawbacks to it? What are some of the cool powers? How you can kill you, other special effects, etc. Then you can get into sort of setting up your setting. What is the city like? How does reality or how does society react to your vampirism, etc.? All of these are options that you lay on the table for your players, and then you get into a discussion with it. And you start bidding back and forth blood points, which is you have a certain number of those going into the game. And what if you have a player who really, really, really wants vampirism to be based off of some sort of weird astral spidery parasite? Okay, don't know what that is, but I could see some players wanting to come up with that. Hey, Josh, I'm talking about you here. Then they can dump most of their blood points into that, win that discussion, but then they have less control over some of the other factors later on. As someone who likes to exert a heck of a lot of control over the games that he's running, I read this and I won't lie, I got a little hyvey. But it holds up really well as a collaborative build discussion for your game. It's an interesting direction that a lot of games are taking now, which put as much of the control for storytelling and for narrative flow in the hands of the players as there is in the GM. I will freely admit that I sometimes get a little stink eye when I start looking at and thinking about these games, but I like the direction that it's going. So with Vampire City, what you have here is a very clever setup where you can build your own undead monstrosity. You can make it whatever you want it to be, have society built around it however you and your players feel like having it be, I think for this to really work, you'd have to have a GM who was able to unclench considerably, let the players have a lot of rein and a lot of rope, and then find ways of weaving in the story and the type of tale that you want to spin yourself towards their game. There is a game system that operates from within this. It is a pretty nice, rules-light, straightforward, more narrative-focused type of game. I think it works rather nicely. If you want something with a bit more crunch, then you're welcome to go out and find your own dark fantasy, urban fantasy, modern magic type of setting of whatever turns your crank. For Game Geeks, I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Good day and good gaming.